Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, lovely people, depending on where you're watching us from in this beautiful world of ours. And this morning, for Mia, this evening, I'm so happy to have Mia Gottfried on camera with me. And her beautiful publicist, PR agent, has actually reached out to me and said, I think you need to share Mia's story. And then we connected and I knew why. So, Mia, without further ado, would you do us the honor and introduce yourself to the audience? Welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Mia Godfrey, and I'm originally from Romania. I grew up under the communist regime, and I moved to the United States when I was 27 years old.
Wow. So, of course, the number one question is why, how, what got you there? And obviously, times were really tough where you grew up. My sister knows from
Yes.
Romania, so I'm always happy to
Yeah.
make connections with people from countries that I actually know. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what got you to.
Extremely hard. So in my memoir, I talk a lot about the poverty in Romania and how our main fight every day was more fighting for survival, fighting to fight
Yeah.
food. And my parents were
Mm,
working full-time jobs and they could barely provide one meal, sometimes two meals a day.
mm,
But when I was 27 years old, I was in college, and it was a group of uh, people came on a mission trip to visit an
mhm,
orphanage. Well, I was a manager at that orphanage. So
mhm,
there was this young man that came. That was his first time leaving the comfort of his home, which was USA at the time. So
mm.
he came to Romania, and we met. He helped out at that orphanage for about a week, and then we start talking. And 8 months later, we got married. We only saw each other 3 times
Wow.
prior to our wedding day. And
Wow.
somebody asked me, said, "Would you let your daughter do that?" I was like, "Absolutely not."
Of course not.
But then I did it, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. Unfortunately,
I
he
love
he
that.
passed away in 2015.
Yeah. Mia, before we go to your husband's story, because I'm such a sucker for a good love story because I lived one of them. So yeah, your story really touched me. I just want to go back to your childhood for one quick moment. You are one of how many children?
10.
That's
I'm the
incredible.
youngest of 10 children. Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm the
Yeah.
youngest of five, and people always are like, "Oh my God, five children!" And then you meet somebody else, and my parents come from very different families. My dad was the only
Yeah.
son, and my mom was one of nine children. So
Yeah.
I cannot imagine the craziness, but I bet also a lot of love that you must have felt growing up
Yes.
from your parents, fighting
Yes.
for survival, fighting to feed their family. So then you meet this beautiful young man, and you follow him to the USA. How was your family with that, and how did you feel? There must have been so many mixed
It
emotions.
was it was extremely hard because as I was the youngest of 10 and we grew up in extreme poverty, my parents had an ability of teaching us how to be grateful. And all through my childhood, we thought we were rich. We thought everybody
Mm,
else had less than us. And we just were able to just be grateful for everything. So when we had that one meal sometimes,
mm,
a day, we were grateful because in our minds, like other kids don't even have that. So that's how we were able to um, be grateful for everything. And we were so extremely close as a family.
mm,
So I told that to so many people that my wedding day was it was bittersweet. It was one of the
mm.
most beautiful, but also one of the hardest days of my life. I remember I cried before I walked to the altar. I
Because
cried
you got married in the
when
US, right?
I
Without your
got married
family.
in Romania first. So
Oh,
I
okay.
graduated college. Yeah, so he flew back the
Okay.
third time I saw him. He flew
Hmm.
back. I graduated from college on May 24th of 2008, and we got
Hmm.
married May 25th. And we flew to the United States in May 27 and got married here on May 28.
Wow.
So it was a whole
Wow.
week of, but
Lots
I
of
remember I was
emotions.
at the Right, yes. I was at the altar exchanging vows, and then I looked and in the audience, and my mom was crying. One of my sister was
Oh,
holding her, and then my brothers. I have six brothers. They were all lined up on one long bench. Every single one of them were crying. I saw
oh
them
wow.
cry more at my wedding than at my father's funeral. So it was
Mm,
such a mix of emotions. And
yeah.
as soon as that ceremony was over, we got in a car and went to the airport. So even the
Oh,
goodbyes were not,
very
we didn't have
rushed.
time. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Wow. I can't even imagine like so many celebrations and emotions and the new start and the letting go of family that would have been intense. Can I ask you, like I know we're jumping around a little bit with the story, but how many times have you been back to Romania to see your family since you since
Um,
that day, since you
I,
moved?
yes. So my first husband promised my mom that would bring me home every year, and he kept his promise. And my
Wow.
current husband made the same promise to my mom. So I went home every single year in 17 years,
Hmm.
except 2021 due to the pandemic.
Yeah,
The
of
border
course.
was closed. So in 2021, I did not. But I went
That's
twice in
incredible.
2022. Yeah,
Oh, just to make up for it.
to make up for it.
That's incredible. Tell us a little bit about your love story because I just absolutely love it. You know, like meeting, only seeing each other 3 times, and you said you never regretted it, and you
Mhm.
had your husband since um until 2015. Tell us
7
how
years.
life was for you.
Yeah. In the beginning was extremely hard because it was here this man that I was madly in love with, and he
Mm,
was working for the police department, so he were working very long hours, and
mm,
I was used to with a big family. I was the youngest of 10. We had um uh, nephews and nieces, and
full
constantly the
house.
house was full. Yes, and I came to the United States, and the first 6 months were extremely hard because I
Mm,
had no driving license, and I couldn't go anywhere. I had no job.
mm,
I barely knew English. So my
yeah.
first 6 months, I dived really deep into studying English. And I remember I bought a
Hmm.
dictionary, and I started with the dictionary, and then I bought different books. So within 6 months, I was able to get my driving license and my first job. So it was harder in the first 6 months, but um, I always
Wow.
knew that was it was a marriage that it, it came from God. God allowed us to come
Mm,
together, and of course, as every marriage, we struggled with fertility issues, and
mm,
for 7 years we tried back and forth to figure out what's going on, and um, in May of 2015, it was our anniversary. He surprised me with the paperwork that we were going to start the process of adoption to adopt a little child.
yeah.
And unfortunately, a month later, when he passed, I was not able to continue that. I said, I don't know. I can't even take care of myself right now. So I
Yeah.
tried to go back home to Romania, which unfortunately I found out through all of that I lost my citizenship and I could not go back home and I was not welcome back home. So,
Wow.
but
That must have been a real shock for you to find out in that
it
time where
was
you would have needed family
extremely,
the most.
yeah, was extremely lonely season. Yeah.
May I ask, Mia, and I always say to my guests, there's no need to share any details about the death of your husband at all unless you want to talk about it. But all I want to know is, was it a sudden death or was it something that you knew was
It
coming?
was It was a sudden death. So my
Yeah.
husband was a lieutenant for the police department in our town, and he was working out a lot. Sometimes he was
Mm,
working out twice a day before work
mhm,
and after work. So that
mhm.
particular day, he came home and went to mow the grass. And then about 4 o'clock, he sent me a message and said, "Can you come home?" We were married 7 years, and he never asked me to come home before my
Yeah.
shift was over. I said, is everything okay? He said, I'm not feeling well. So I
Mm.
drove home. It was about 35 minutes away from work. So when
Yeah.
I came home, he was just in the bed, and he said, I'm just really hot and I cannot cool off. So I called the ambulance. They came, they picked him up, they checked his vitals, like, oh, he's going to be okay. He just got overheated. So I was planning to go on the ambulance, and they said, no, you can follow with the car so we could drive back home.
Hmm.
So I followed with the car, and by the time I got to the hospital, I was right behind the ambulance. And I went to fill out the paperwork, and they said, hey, can you wait in that room? And I was like, I just need to go be with my husband.
Yeah.
And by 6 o'clock, the doctor came and said, unfortunately, he passed away. Of course, it was an extreme shock because he
Yeah.
was only 41 years old, 42. He was 40, and
Yeah.
he was one of the healthiest people I've knew. And of course, I asked for an autopsy because nothing made sense.
Yeah.
Later on, so they ruled it as a heat stroke, and they said that they discovered he had an undetected um, heart problem,
Yeah.
which we didn't know nothing about.
Mm.
So it was unexpected.
Wow. I can't even imagine, like you've gone through such intense emotional waves, as in meeting this beautiful man, knowing that this man is your, love of your life, your husband to be, and then you leave the country, your entire family behind, such a huge family, to complete loneliness at first when he was at work, teaching yourself a language that you didn't even speak before. I'm so, can I just say, I'm in awe of what you did. I really am. This is incredible what you've done to teach yourself a language, and get your driver's license, get a job, everything. And then the next wave of emotions, having to deal with all of that, with your husband's funeral, etc., and not being able to go back home where you could have been held with so much love. That would have been one of the hardest things ever. Was there any chance that your family could come out and visit? Could you go back for a
Um,
visit at some
Two of
stage?
my
That
sisters, one of them was living in Africa at the time. She
Mhm.
was a missionary there over 20 years at that time.
Mm.
So she was able to get a visa pretty quick. She made it to the United States, I think, about 3 weeks after my husband passed.
Yeah,
And my other sister that lived in Romania was a little harder for her to get the visa. It took maybe 5 weeks for her to get here. She was able to come and stay with me for a couple of weeks as well.
that's
But
beautiful.
what I've learned through that, this is one thing that I like to tell people. When I was
Hmm.
beating myself down and I was questioning God, why did you? It's almost like I was arguing with God, like, why did you
Mm.
bring me here so I can end up all alone? I have no
Mm.
family. I can't go back home. I don't understand my purpose. I really couldn't see what was the purpose of it. And through all of that, was a specific lady. Her name is Judy. That's one example. That was from a local church. She
Mhm.
worked at our company for a while. She used to come at my door. She used to leave food at the door, knock, and go back in the car because she knew that I became so sheltered. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just want to hide from the world. And
Yeah,
she used to text me, I just left some soup by the door. I know you don't want to talk. And usually she's done that for months. And then I have another dear friend I was working with that um everything was in a haze. For days I didn't remember what happened. It was so traumatic that she
mm,
came directly from work. And I remember she was wearing a white dress. And she's the one that drove me back home that night. And I didn't want to walk in the bedroom, so I slept on the couch. And I remember in the middle of the night, I was crying on the couch, and I got up and I saw her sitting on that couch. And I could tell she was on her phone, texting people and asking to pray. She said, I don't know how to help her, but she's broken.
mm.
So she stayed there on the couch for days in the same white dress, knee length. It was a professional um, uh, office dress.
Yeah.
And I remember about 3 days after, she sent a message to somebody at work, and they said, I don't need anything except, can you bring me a toothbrush? Didn't even thought about she needed to brush her teeth. She needed to eat.
Yeah.
And her name was Carol. And then there were other friends that they were just
Bless her.
coming. Yeah. One person said, can you open your garage door? And I'm like, no. I finally did. He walked in my garage door, took all the trash and took it to the dumpster and said, close the garage door. So what I've learned through that we don't have to go through grief alone. What I've learned that for over 6 months, this church in this community, they were bringing me baskets and toilet paper and food, and they were keep leaving it at my door. So I
Mm.
think everybody learned really quick that I did not want to socialize, didn't want to talk. I didn't know what to
Yeah.
say. I was
Yeah.
just so broken. I just want to go back home, and I
Mm.
couldn't. And I've learned that so many people saw my hurt, and they came together as a community and tried to help me the best that they could. And I would have never made it through that season without these people
Exactly.
that I mentioned, and Judy and Carol and Mary and Megan. I mean, there's so many. And I know to the audience, those names don't mean nothing, but for me, those were angels. Those were my lifeline. And
I
that's what
love
kept
that when
me and
people, yeah,
sustained me.
I love this
Yeah.
so much when
So,
people do give shout outs to particular
yeah.
people because sometimes they don't even know in the moment how much that means to us, you know. And I I think it is just such a need, that cocooning stage, you know, to really just it's like, I know it's such an overused comparison, but like with the butterfly, you really do need to go within. You need to go through the messy and gooey and horrible emotions and feelings before you can come out and fly again. It is such a
Yeah.
needed process for humans as well, and I think it's so underrated how important that is to go through the process. And sometimes. Or I want to actually say almost always, people on the outside don't really understand that process, that need for cocooning. But having people come past with those littlest things, they mean so much. The bringing food, the taking out the trash, the understanding. Hey, I know you don't need to not want to talk right now, but I left food on your doorstep. You
Yeah.
know, these are the
Yeah.
moments that I value the most. I'm going to share a quick story that I've told so many people, but I think you would so appreciate that. I had a lady come past, and she was just another school mom. She wasn't even a close friend of mine. And when I came home one day, and it was shortly after my husband died, she left this beautiful big white wicker basket, and it was full of lunchbox treats for the kids. And it had a little note, one less thing to worry about. And still now, when I talk about it, I get so emotional because it was
Yeah.
so beautiful. Such a little thing made a huge difference. That every morning when the kids needed to go to school, I just grabbed one of those out of the basket. It was full for like an
Yeah.
entire month, you know. And I thought that was so thoughtful. And I even said to her afterwards, "It's such a beautiful basket. Can I bring it back to you?" She said, "No, I want you to keep it." And I still have all my, band-aids and medicine
Yeah.
and all that,
Yeah.
thermometers. Everything is in there. It's my little medicine cabinet,
Yeah.
and it's the white
Yeah.
wicker basket.
That's
And
beautiful.
every time I take it down, I think of Bernadette. And I thought there's such a beautiful and thoughtful thing to do.
Yes.
Mia, you have a second love story. How did that
Yes.
start? Share about that.
So when I lost my first husband, his name was Robert, I made a promise to myself that I would never remarried. And I didn't know what I was promising. So
Mm,
for 4 years and a half, I said no. I felt like if I'm gonna remarried, I felt like I was going to betray the first love. But I've learned later on that was not the case. There is more love to give around. So 4 years and a half later,
mhm,
the same church that was keep bringing me baskets and food and household supplies, I decided to start going there just because I felt such a love and I felt like it
Mm,
was a family away from home. So
mm,
that's where my husband was working on the security at that church. And we became friends because I was working on the security at that time as well,
mhm,
and we became friends. And one day he came to me, and I was ready. I said, if he's gonna ask me out, I said, it's not you, it's me. I'll never remarried, but I'm just gonna let him down slowly because some friends of mine said, look, he will, and I said, no, I'll let
mm,
him know. So when Sunday came to me, and I was ready. I was like ready to just reject him. But instead of
mhm.
asking me out, he said, "Hey, would you pray to see if it's God's will for us to just get to know each other better?" And my first thought is like, "Oh, I don't know where to go from here because I can't say
Yeah,
no. I don't want to pray because I'm not ready to
yeah.
pray." I was like, there's no way,
I
no
love
come back.
this.
I had nothing because I was prepared. I thought I
Oh,
was. So I
mm,
said, sure, sure. So the week after, I took a trip to Israel because that was my first husband's dream to go there. So I went to kind of honor his wishes and take some of his
mm,
stuff there. And
mhm,
during that trip, Kenny's sister was there and was talking about him. And I remember showing me he injured himself. He cut himself at work. And my heart just broke. And I was like, that man, he's in the hospital by himself. And I said, it's not going to hurt. I'm just going to send him a message, say, hey, I hope you get well. So that's all it took. Him asking me to pray. I told him, I'm sorry he got injured. I'll pray for him. So when I came back, he asked me out, and our first date started at 5. And about 10:30, they were trying to close the restaurant, so they asked us to leave. And it was so much. It's like I knew him all my life, but he
mm.
also has been through loss, and he's been through so much grief himself that was what brought us together.
Your
And by the
connection.
third date, which was the third week, we both knew we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. So
Wow.
we've been happily married for 6 years.
Wow. Mia, that
Yeah.
is so beautiful. It is such a blessing
Yeah.
to have this second chance and another chance
Yeah.
of such deep love. It is such a beautiful story. I absolutely love it. Um, at what stage in your life did you decide that you would write your memoirs?
So in 2023, one of my sister, the one that I was closer in age to, she got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And for 11 months, I became her caretaker. And our conversations changed. We didn't talk about daily things. We just talked about life and how short life
Mm,
is and about legacy and dreams.
mm,
And she's the one that encouraged me to write a memoir and talk about our childhood in Romania and talk about abuse and talk about grief. And so she passed away in the end of 2023. And I remember I came home and I told my husband, I love you with all my heart. I just don't know where to go from here. Like
yeah,
every single loss has been so different. Like the loss of my
yeah.
father, the loss of my husband, the loss of my sister. Everyone took a part of me in a different way. But
Mm.
Mona was the person that knew me before the world did. She knew every secret, every conversation. She was the one that knew everything. So I felt like a part of me completely, I completely lost myself. But a few months
Your
into it, I
sister's name
decided,
is Mona.
Mona, yes, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And she's
I
the one that encouraged me to write.
that's just incredible. I love the similarities, as in, I can see there are some similarities in our stories, but my husband's name was Rob, so that is
Oh, wow.
that is incredible. I did not. I don't know how this didn't come up in our little pre-chat because I always meet with my guests before
Yeah,
we have an interview,
yeah.
and I really love that. And my best friend for decades and since high school, her name is Mona. So I just thought
Oh,
that's really
wow.
incredible that your sister's name is Mona. That was like, wow, I
Yeah,
love that. Um,
wow.
So when did the book come out?
Well, the book actually came out on March 3rd, and it's called Buried
Yeah,
Not Broken, a
yeah,
memoir of survival, sisterhood, and starting over.
yeah.
However, this week we launched our second book, which I'm co-writing with my husband, and it's
Oh,
about second
wow.
chances.
Yeah. And that has already
Yeah.
come out, or you're
It's in pre-orders, so people
okay.
can pre-order it right now, but it will be out in stores in September 3rd.
I love that it's already in pre-order because we will be sharing all the links to the first book and for the pre-order for the second book in the comments below. So rest assured, if you're watching this right now, I can't add it while we're live, but come back when the live is done, and we will have all the links in the show notes so you can get Mia's book. It's such a beautiful love story, and of course there are all sorts of emotions involved in that. But for me, whenever I talk to people, the strongest emotion for me in every story is always love. And you have so much of that in your story, like
Yeah.
woven through, like starting with your family, with your first husband, with your second husband, and your beautiful second family, the church, like all the people that cared for you, that held space for you. And you said something in your story, Mia, that touches me so deeply because I feel this is the number one thing that that we as a society need to learn to do better, and that is holding space for people, not trying to push them, not trying to show up with advice, not trying to show up with too many questions or suggestions, just to be there. That
Yeah.
lady in white that you said that came and sat with you, was it Carol?
Carol, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is such a beautiful shining example for me, to just show up and be present. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything, just be present. And I think if we can learn that as a society to help people walk through grief and just witness their grief, sometimes we just need that, somebody to witness it and be there for us. Before we conclude our conversation here, Mia, if there is one thing, and I know there would be a million lessons that you have learned throughout the journey, but if there's one that you would like to pick and share here. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Sorry, I just had a technical glitch show up here. Anyway, let me just continue here. If there's one thing that you would like to share with our audience that was one of the most important lessons for you in life to carry on and go forward, what
Yeah.
would that be?
Grieve your own way. Like you said earlier, everybody's going to try to give you an advice.
Mm,
And there are people that are going to tell you got to go to grief counseling, or you have to go through all 6 stages, but everybody
mm,
grieves differently. And the biggest
yeah.
thing is give yourself some grace and be in the
Mm,
moment. If you feel like crying, cry. If you want to talk about it, talk
yeah.
about it, because we don't all grieve the same, and it's
Mm,
okay. It's okay. This is a hard journey as it is. Just take it one day at a time, but do it your own way, because we
yeah.
all grieve different.
I love this so much. I love this so much. There's so much permission in that. And I think that's what we all need. Mia, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story because, as I said, there's so much love in there. But I also can't wait to see your second book. This is really, really exciting. I love that you're writing that together. And for everybody listening here or watching this, if you like what you see, please click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you get the weekly updates on Unsilenced Grief. Mia Godfrey, thank you so much for being here. This is Mia and Marie signing off.